All right, welcome everyone. We might get a start. I know that there's some schools trying to join online now, so we'll have a few people coming on through, but we will get started on time so we can make the most of the session. So, sorry, to everyone who is here, hello and welcome to the Educator workshop for the School and Community Citizen Science Project. If you haven't seen me around before, my name is Nicole and I work alongside Sophie at the Asia Education Foundation, who's also here today or will be joining very shortly, as well as Aaron and Mehdi from Australia Wards in PNG, who are also here in the background. At AEF, we are located in Naarm or Melbourne on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I'm very grateful to be working and living on this land and pay my respects to their ancestors and elders who are part of the longest continuing culture in the world. So we'd also like to hear from our PNGAus and get a really good indication of who's joining us in the meet today. So if you haven't had a chance already, if I could just ask that someone from each school introduce yourself in the chat with your school name, your full name, and any of your colleagues joining with you as well. So before I hand over to Zoos Victoria to launch this project, I just want to quickly draw your attention to the online Kickstarter materials developed by the PAS team, which you may have seen in yesterday's Talk Survey edition. So the online Kickstarter is a series of short videos which provides students and teachers with the fundamentals for using Google, which continues to be the main platform used for all our online learning and collaboration at PAS. So as part of this, there are 6 videos, each of which exploring different features of Google, so including what even is Google, how to create a Gmail account, how to use the different apps within Google, so like Google Docs, Slides, and Jamboard, and also takes a moment to navigate the PAS website and also the Google Classroom and how you can interact online using those tools. So you can find the resources on the Learning Bank in the PAS website, and I'll also just share a link to those in the chat as well. So you can, oh sorry, it's a broken link, I'll have to try that again. So you can jump in and have a look at those whenever you get the chance. So now moving on to what we're all here for, we are super thrilled to introduce you all to the School and Community Citizen Science Project, which is a student learning activity designed and delivered by Zoos Victoria and in collaboration with Port Moresby Nature Park, both very good friends of the PAS program. So the activity is a groundbreaking initiative to develop STEM skill set and mindset and support students to participate in a global bird conservation project. And the purpose of today's session is just so teachers can get a better understanding of this project and feel comfortable supporting your students to become citizen science. So I'd now like to hand over to Education Officers Francesca and Garant at Zoos Victoria to introduce the project and lead us through today's workshop. So thank you, I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm just going to share the screen.
While you're sharing a screen, I'm just going to say hello. I'm Garant. I'm going to be over in the chat box. So if you have any questions, type your questions in there and then I'll do my best to answer them. So I'm going to disappear. Thanks heaps.
Okay, I'm just going to pop in a microphone and headphones as well so you can hear me properly. All right, okay, you can hear me okay? Yes, cool. So welcome everybody. We're very excited to be working with you on this project. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I work on, who are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And they have been caring for the land and the sky and the waterways of our Earth for thousands of years, and I like to acknowledge everything that they have done and are doing. Like Nicole said, my name's Francesca, and Garant, my colleague who's ducked off, we're both education officers here at Zoos Victoria. And welcome to School Na Community Survey Project. I hope I said that correctly. So this is brought to you by the PASS team, Port Moresby Nature Park and Zoos Victoria. I'm going to start off with a little video. It's just a quick video, just of some birds. And I guess while you are watching, what I'd like you to do is have a think about which is your favorite bird and why. And you can share that with somebody that might be in the room with you, or if you like, you can put it into the chat box. Oops, hopefully this works. All right. Now, hopefully you've thought about what your favorite bird is. For me personally, I love kingfishers. So things like kookaburras are in that family as well. And I love them for their beautiful colors. I love their beaks. I just love everything about them. And with kookaburras, they're amazing calls as well. So hopefully you've thought of what your favorite bird is, and maybe had a chat with someone about that too. But so this project is designed to be a global bird conservation project, and it's designed to develop student STEM knowledge and skills through citizen science. And we're going to go through what that means in a little bit more detail. But students will be conducting some scientific investigations and research, practicing the skill of data collection, which is really important at the age year levels that we're working with, using technology and maths to analyze and represent data, and also developing science communication skills. And I'm going to go into much more detail about how they're going to do that as well. So it is designed as a cross-curricular project. It will touch on digital technologies, maths, science, more specifically biology, STEM, and some of those general capabilities as well. There's quite a few resources that we do have for you. So we have the teaching guide. Hopefully you've got a copy of that with you. It'd be really great if you do have it, if you have it nearby, so you can follow along with it. And then we've also got that student workbook to help your students work through the project as well. And then on top of that, on Google Classroom, we have some videos. We've got an educator guide from eBird, which is a platform where you can upload your data. And all of those resources can be found on Google Classroom. So now we're going to get into what your teaching sequence is going to look like. And this is outlined throughout the teaching guide. If you do have any questions as well while I am presenting and talking, pop them in the chat box. Garrett's watching the chat box, and so he can answer those questions for you. But so we always like to start any sessions we do with trying to connect the students to what they're doing. So the first thing that we have is Miriam Sapuma, she works at Port Moresby Nature Park. She's one of our female scientists, and she's a bird scientist. And she's done a really lovely introduction for your students, just talking about what she does, but also talking about what the project is. So there's the written version, and there's also a video version. So you can access that in whichever way suits you best. Once you've had a look at that introduction and your students have a little bit more of an idea about what they'll be doing, we have just a little I see and I wonder activity where it's just about similar to what I just did with you, is just showing some images of birds and getting students to think about their experience that they already have had with birds. And this is really important in connecting students with what they're about to do. Yeah. We then move into teaching bird biology. So there's 3 things that are covered throughout the teaching guide. So there's adaptations, migration, and then food webs. So if we're thinking of bird adaptations, there's the 3 types of adaptations. So there's behavioral, structural, and physiological. And these are the key ideas as well that students should be getting out of each of the workshop sessions. So all of these adaptations are designed to help a species survive and to reproduce. Some of the most common bird adaptations that you're going to see, you'll see mating displays, the wonderful birds of paradise displays that I'm sure most of you know of. So these are a type of behavioral display, nest building, which is again a behavioral display, beak shape and size, wing and feet shape, both structural adaptations. And then flight has a lot of really interesting physiological adaptations that we can't see, but things like their heart rate and how much carbon dioxide their blood can absorb. So those are a few things that will probably come up as you're talking about adaptations when you're talking about it with your students. Next is bird migration. And I guess the main things that your students should learn from this is that there's 2 main reasons for bird migration. So breeding and food availability. And migration will usually happen at different seasons because of the fluctuations in food availability and things like that. And it'll be from one region to another. And that might be just within a country or between countries. And there's only 2 species of bird that migrate between PNG and Australia. So we've got the channel-billed cuckoo and also the eastern cole. It was formerly known as the common cole. So these 2 birds, in the student workbooks, we've got some tables that the students can look through and fill out information about why these birds migrate, where they're migrating to and from. And we also cover the orange-bellied parrot, which is a bird that we work with here at Melbourne Zoo. And then lastly, we've got food webs. So your students will be learning about the superb lyrebirds food web, which is a bird of paradise that we have here in Australia. And you can see an image of it on your screen there. This is also provided in the workbook. So a food web, it's a representation of the food chains in an ecosystem and how they're interconnected. So if I go back to this image here, the food chain would just be a single line. So for example, it would be the sun, which goes to the southern sassafras and then to the swallowtail butterfly. But because I have all of the interconnections drawn up in this diagram, then it's considered a food chain is the single line. It's considered a food web because it's showing all the interconnections within that ecosystem. So the most important things is to know the difference between the food web and the food chain, but also to understand that there's the 4 different trophic levels within a food web and an ecosystem. So you've got the producers who produce their own food, and usually this is through photosynthesis. So an example in our diagram here is the silver wattle. You've then got the primary consumers who will eat the producers. So in this case, it's the hairstring butterfly. And then the secondary consumers who eat the primary consumers, and they may also eat the producers. In this case, we've got the owl, and then the tertiary consumer, which is an organism that will eat primary and secondary consumers, and possibly a producer as well. So in this case, the fox. So that's the real key information that your students should be getting out of those food web activities. At this point as well, it's also important to get students to think about what might happen if something was to change within that food web. So it might be, the introduction of a new predator. It might be the loss of something in that food web, so maybe the loss of insects, and really getting students to start thinking about the effects that that will have within the ecosystem. Have I got any questions or anything so far, or am I good to keep going? No? Okay. All right. So once we've gotten through teaching of the bird biology, this is where we start to bring in some of the science skills. And so the biggest science skill that we'll be using throughout this project is scientific observation. So we've got a couple of activities to get students to practice that skill first, and then we'll put it into practice with collecting the real data that goes towards the citizen science project. So the first activity is just a scientific observation activity using what we call an ethogram. And this is the example of the ethogram you can see on the screen. So this is actually used to study animal behavior and animal behavior over time. And so it allows us to understand what normal behaviors might be, if there's any abnormal behaviors, when animals might eat or sleep and things like that. So what you'd need to do for this activity is actually go outside, find a space where you can watch some birds, and working with a partner, your students are going to do this observation for 5 minutes. So they'll pick a bird to watch. One student will be the timer, and then one student will be the observer of the bird. And so every 30 seconds, the students need to write down what that bird is doing and what the bird's behavior is. And some of the things that you might see is flying, walking, eating, interacting socially with another bird, being aggressive, nesting. So there's a whole range of things that you might see. And something I would encourage you to do as well before you go outside is do a bit of a brainstorm with your students and get them to think about some behaviors that they could potentially see when they're doing their behavior observation. And this is also a really great activity to link back to behavioral adaptations. So you're actually going to be seeing some of those behavioral adaptations, you know, in real life with real birds doing them. So you might want to get students to start thinking about, well, why is the bird acting that way and how does it help that bird to survive? So that's that first observation skill activity. And then the second one, which is really important for when we moved to the citizen science part of the project, is actually identifying birds. And it sounds like a hard thing to do, and I mean, it is, you know, can be quite difficult, but there's a few things that we can use to help us to identify different birds. And I'm sure that your students will probably already know what some of the birds are that are around them. So the first thing is the size and shape of the bird itself, of its tail, of its beak, you know, and any of those characteristics that really stand out. The next thing is the coloration. So it might have, you know, specific stripes on it or patterns on it. It might have a specific colored belly or a pattern on its tail, which will tell you what bird it might be. And then the behavior. So looking at how it's sitting, is it eating, is it flying, is it on the ground? All of those sorts of things can really give you clues as to what species of bird it is. And finally is the habitat. So is it in the trees? Is it sitting up perched in the trees? Is it hopping along on the ground? Is it sitting in a shrub, darting in and out of a shrub? And so the idea behind this activity is to, again, go outside and try and identify at least 3 different types of birds based off of some of these things. And you may get it wrong. A good discussion to have within the classroom about which birds they are. And again, you can link it back to structural adaptations. So maybe they've noticed something and wondering why the bird might have that adaptation. So really good ways to link the bird biology with their scientific observation skills. eBird is the global citizen science project, that platform that we're recommending to use. Thanks, Karen, for the question. So can they use apps such as BirdNet? Definitely. And I'm going to go through a couple of other things that they can use to help identify birds as well. But yeah, great. So Yes, eBird is the platform that we're using for the citizen science part of the project. So students are going to be, like I said a bit earlier, developing their skills in data collection, scientific observation, bird identification throughout the project, with the aim of contributing at what they find into eBird. So eBird is actually used by scientists to track and monitor different bird species and their movements around the world. So bird scientists look at this and they use the data that's put in by citizen scientists like yourselves and your students, and they actually use that to monitor bird populations and their movements and look at any changes that might be happening or anything out of the ordinary. So this is that real world application. Yes, I've said this. So it is the world's largest biodiversity related citizen science project. It is run by Cornell University. There's more than 100 million bird sightings which are contributed worldwide by people on eBird. So it's a really fantastic resource. And that's exactly what your students are going to be doing. They're going to be collecting data about the birds in your area and then using that data to contribute to eBird and being citizen scientists. It's a tongue twister. So you can use eBird to help you identify species that might be in your area. If you go onto the eBird website, you can explore. So you can explore specific species, you can explore regions, so you can explore exactly where you are. You can look at species maps, and a really useful one as well as species hotspots. So you might like to go in and have a little play around with this because it's really a really cool feature that you can have a look at. And there's also the Merlin Bird ID app, and this is again run by the Cornell lab. And it's very similar to the student observations, the student bird identification activity, where the app goes through different things like what's the bird size, what color is it, and you pop all of those things in as well as where you're located, and it will tell you the most likely species that you're going to be seeing in your area. So it's a really useful app that you can use. And then lastly, you can also submit bird photos to Google Classroom and we will help you to try and identify them. So there's a few different things that you can do, and I'm sure that there's others that we haven't mentioned that you can think of. You might have a bird expert, a parent or something like that in your community that could help you out. But there's a few things that are available to you to help you identify birds if you're not sure what they are. In the student check-in as well, we can also help to identify any birds that maybe have really stumped students. Okay, a few tips that we have for eBird. So we've provided an eBird Essentials Guide for Educators, which is made by eBird. So we've provided that on Google Classroom. So I definitely recommend having a look through that because it's really useful. And it goes through step by step what you need to know to use eBird properly. You have the option to create a group account rather than a single account, which I think is wonderful for a classroom. So it just means that all of the data that your students are going to be putting up on eBird will go onto the same account rather than all onto different ones. And that'll be really useful for when you look at analyzing your data. And if possible, there is a free eBird Essentials online course, which will take around 20 minutes, but it goes through step by step what you need to understand to put your data into eBird, what eBird actually does with the data, and how the information is used to conserve birds. So if you can do that course, I'd highly recommend it. It's not very long and it's free, so can't go wrong really. Everything I've just spoken about with eBird, all the links and everything, they're all in your teaching guide and your workbook. So don't stress if you didn't get everything down that I've just said. It's all written about, in your teaching guide and in the student workbook. And all the links and everything are up there on Google Classroom. All right. So your students have connected to birds. They've learnt a little bit about bird biology. They've learnt, what scientific observation skills they need. So now it's time to collect the data. So where you can either use the eBird has an app that you can use, and it actually uploads the data directly to eBird, which is wonderful. So you can use eBird to collect your data, or if you need to, there's also a paper version of what eBird. There's a paper data collection sheet that you can use, and that's just about filling in the bird species that you see, the number of individuals, and there's all the other little bits of information that you would fill in at the top of that sheet there. So there's a couple of options of the ways that you can do it. You might like students to use the paper version when you're going outside and doing the data collection. And so the idea is that when you do your data collection, students are assigned a space in an area that you're going to be collecting your data in. So your data about the birds. And then again, working in pairs, each group will have a 20-meter zone that they're observing. And this is so to reduce the double up of counting birds. So you're not having students just all looking at the same birds. It's sort of in quadrats. And so each pair will have 10 meters that they're looking at, and they're looking at up and down and all around on the ground and everything. And you can decide on an observation time with your students, whatever's going to work best, for you and your classroom. And so in this observation time, it would just be about collecting data about what birds you're seeing, how many of them you're seeing, and then what area you're in, and all that sort of stuff. So you're putting that scientific observation skills into practice now. Then it's about submitting your data to eBird. So hopefully you'll have that group account to log in, and so students can log in, they can upload the data they've collected from their sheets. And then what you can do is actually download your data and download data from your area about all the birds that have been seen, when they've been seen, and the number of them. And this is the data that you can then use to create your scientific report. If you can't access the data and download it, we've also provided you with an Excel sheet with sample bird data on it that you can use to put into your scientific reports as well. So there's both, again, the online version and then a paper version of that data if you need it. And then it's about writing that scientific report. So this is the science communication part of the project. So using the data collected and using any extra data that maybe you decide to use, students need to create this scientific report. So the template that you can see on the screen is actually in the student workbook, and the template has everything that's expected in each of the areas of a scientific report. And you don't have to have everything in there, but these are the sort of the most important things that should be seen in the scientific report. And this is where students will start to use things like math and technology skills to develop the report. Karen, yeah, so if you have a look at the eBird Educator guide, it actually does a step-by-step on how to create a group account. So I would recommend having a look at the eBird Educator guide to answer that question. There's a different space you need to go to if you're wanting to do that. Yes, but definitely have a look at the eBird Educator guide because it's really useful in stepping through all of those things. Okay, so scientific report. It's a document that's used to detail and discuss different aspects of an experimental investigation. So it allows whoever's reading it to understand the experiment without having to do it by themselves. So your students should be outlining, the different things they've gone through to collect their bird observation data and what they've done with their data. So when they're moving to presenting their results as table or graph, talking about how they've done that and all of that sort of thing. And then lastly, we are asking students to create a scientific presentation. So this is different to the scientific report. The scientific report will have a lot of detail in it, going through exactly what students have done to get the answers that they've got in their scientific report. But what we're asking is that students actually turn those scientific reports into a presentation which is watched by scientists at Port Moresby Nature Park, PASS, and also Zoos Victoria. And so this presentation should be about 10 minutes, no longer than 10 minutes. And it's a really brief summary about what their scientific report has discovered. And so this is really about making science accessible to everybody. So thinking about language and all that sort of stuff will be really important at this point. And thinking about how they can communicate what they've discovered in a way that everybody can understand in 10 minutes. So it's a bit of a challenge, but it's a really good way of thinking about science communication, because often that's one of the issues that scientists have is it's hard to communicate some of the ideas that they've got. So your class might choose to do one presentation all together or divide up into smaller groups. It's totally up to you. How you create that presentation, again, is up to you and what you've got available to you. So you might decide to speak in front of the camera, you might create a PowerPoint, narrate a PowerPoint, or you might decide to do something else. There's, you know, a multitude of things that you can use to create this scientific presentation. There is a resource which we have created as well, which is a PowerPoint about how to create an engaging scientific presentation. So that's definitely something that we'd recommend you watch with your students. It'll give them a few pointers as to how they can turn their scientific report into a presentation. And this presentation is what we're asking students to upload to Google Classroom. And then we're hoping that we can give feedback to students, and also other schools can look at what everybody else has done. So it's a really nice way of sharing all the amazing things that you've discovered. Okay. All right, so this is the sequence. And again, this is in your teaching guide. So starting off with the welcome from Miriam and connecting to birds, moving into the bird biology. So the adaptations, migration, and then also the food webs. Then practicing those skills of scientific observation, and then putting those skills into practice by collecting data that's then submitted to eBird, which is that real world application you're contributing to that citizen science project. And then using their science communication skills to develop that report and that presentation. Some important dates for you to remember after today. So we've got next Tuesday from 3:30 to 4:45, that student introduction workshop. So students are going to meet some of the real scientists that are working with birds at the moment, find out what they'll be doing, watch some cool videos and stuff like that. And it's an opportunity for them to ask questions as well. We've got a check-in workshop the week after on the 21st of June. And so at this workshop, we've got some exclusive behind the scenes footage that no one's seen before that we're going to share with students that come to the check-in workshop. And we're also going to have some activities that you can participate in that will help develop that scientific report at the end. The science presentations are due 24th of July. So that's when we're asking for those presentations to be uploaded onto Google Classroom. And then we've got a celebration week. So obviously it's a week and goes from 25th of July to the 29th of July. And so this is where maybe you'd like to share those presentations with other classes or people within your school community. This is a time where you can watch some of the other schools' presentations that are uploaded onto Google Classroom. And we'll be providing feedback and all that sort of stuff during this time as well. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know if I went through that very quickly. I'm sorry if I did. But thanks again for joining on this project. We're really excited to see what students come up with. And yeah, I mean, eBird is a fantastic resource and it does contribute to, you know, global science, which is amazing. So we're really, really excited to see what sort of data your students can collect. All right. Is there any questions? Feel free to pop questions into the chat box. Or you can pop your hand up, I guess, and yeah, we'll see how we go if you've got any questions. Thank you, Chitra. Yeah, hopefully it wasn't too much and hopefully I didn't go too quickly.
Hi, Francesca. Can I just ask a quick question?
Of course.
Yeah, I was just setting up the group account. It looks like you just set up an individual account, but just have username and password that you share with the students. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's my understanding from it. So you would need to pick an email that you are happy to share with your students.
Yeah.
But it'll have a different password anyway too. So you could use your work email, for example, and then that password could be, you know, class 92C or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other challenges, sorry, what's the final date? One of our challenges is we're just about to go into school holidays for 3 weeks.
Yes. Yep.
So, and I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get this off the ground next week. So we're going to be really tight for times. So can I just double check? So at the moment, when's the what was the final date you want the presentations?
So July, the 24th of July.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the celebration week is starting the 25th of July.
Week afterwards, thank you.
Nicole, I don't know if you can input into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I might jump in. So I guess the showcasing what's coming out of your submissions will be an offline, as in what we'll be sharing. So it is a bit, I guess, I don't even want to say this out loud, but a bit of a softer due date. So if your schools, if you do need to submit it slightly later, that's totally fine with us. Just let us know and we can work with your schedules. Perfect.
Team surgery, students going to work individually or as a group. It's totally up to you and what's going to work best for your class. The project will work either way. So you can have them work individually or as a group, or you can do parts of it as a group, parts of it individually. It's totally up to you and what works best for you. Is there any other questions? I don't know.
Maybe as some questions come through or some people are typing in the chat, I might quickly just share what is on the PAS website and just let everyone know where they can locate all the materials. So this is the project site that's up on the PAS website. So it's currently up at 2022 to 23 activities and projects under student and learning activities here, and then clicking on school and community citizen science project, which will take you onto this page. And so it currently has all the information generally that you need for the project around the description. There's an introduction video here from Kirsty Costa from Zoos Victoria. More information about who's leading the project, more details, the different learning areas and outcomes, including the curriculum links made here as well for year 9 and 10, and some year 11 for the PNG curriculum. The different workshops and times, key dates that you need. And then what I'm focusing more on now is the materials that you can find for this project. So everything you need is already up here. We have the teaching guide here, the student workbook. And so all you need to do is click that icon at the top here to pop that out. And that will be the online version, which you can download onto your computer and print if you'd like. There's all the videos and online workshop recordings here as well. Oh, sorry, just letting someone in. As well as all the videos linked to in the student workbook and teaching guide as well. So anything that's linked there, you can find here on the website, as well as some transcripts available as well. So everything is captioned and subtitles are available, as well as the different resources. So there's the eBird Essentials for Educators, the How to Create a Presentation, and the sample eBird data up here as well. So everything you need is located here, and it's also linked to in the teaching guide. Laura, did you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Good afternoon. I'm Alara from Vanimo Secondary. Okay, so my only concern is like at the moment we have a power problem. Okay, in the province. Okay, so let's say for now I am using my mobile phone only. Okay, so my only concern is for next session for the students. Will it be possible? Let's say if we will not be able to join the group, if this one will be recorded, the one for next Tuesday, and then we can access onto it when the power comes on. Is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for raising that. Everything, all the sessions will be recorded and available on the PAS website, and we can send those recordings to you directly as well, so you can access them when available.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great question, Karen. Again, it's up to your discretion about what level of data analysis is expected. So the data analysis part of it will be what goes into the scientific report and the presentation. So that's not seen by eBird or anything like that. So I guess it depends on where your students are at, and yeah, so I mean, using Excel would be wonderful, and they'd be able to then use what they create in Excel and transport that straight into their scientific report. That's a really great way of doing it. Yeah, so again, totally up to you and your discretion about how the level of how in depth your data analysis is and how you do that. Yeah. It's quite an open project, so that you know, you can come in where your students are at, really. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I don't know if there's any other questions. If there are, feel free to pop your microphone on and ask, or put it in the chat box, or yeah. Nicole, I think I went through it very quickly, so
No, that's okay. We all love an early finish, so I don't think anyone's complaining. All good. And if you didn't have any questions right now, Cedric, would you like to unmute and ask a question?
Hello, Mary Ludi. Our question is, are we going to collect the data for different beds only within the school area, or are we allowed to go to some other locations?
You can, yeah, great question again. You can go wherever you like. So if you look at the data sheet, it actually tells, so you need to write down your location. So if you decide to go off school grounds, just make a note of where you've gone, and then that'll be put into eBird. And yeah, but yeah, it's a great idea to go off site, I think, and not stay at the school ground. Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Yes, you can, Karen. So that the data on the app goes directly into eBird, so it gets uploaded directly on there, and then you can download it from there. So you just log in and you can do that. It's yeah, very cool. I guess if you do have any questions that pop up later on, you can pop those up onto Google Classroom, and we can get to them when we see them. Yeah. Otherwise, I don't know if you've got anything further, Nicole, to add to that.
Yeah, I might wrap up if that's the case. And yeah, as Francesca said, you can ask any questions on the Google Classroom or send them through to the PAS team on WhatsApp or email, and we can pass that on as well. But a big thank you to Francesca and Garant for leading today's workshop and taking us through all components and getting us all really excited and giving us everything we need to know on how we can support our students. So thank you very much. And also a big thank you to all our educators for taking the time out of your very busy days to join this session. we're really looking forward to seeing where this project takes us and seeing your students being citizen scientists in your community. So we'll see you all next week on Tuesday at the same time with your students this time. Oh, sorry, did you have a question?
No, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Just came off mute, no worries. But yeah, so head on to the PAS website for any more information, but please do reach out to the team and we'll be happy to help. So thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks everybody.